to the Intelligent Builder podcast, sponsored by Plutus Agents. Today, I'm joined by Chris Husek, the co-founder and CEO of Husek Brothers Fencing, which is a family-owned fence installation company he built alongside his brothers, starting in 2022 in Eastern North Carolina. And under 4 years, they've grown from zero to mid seven figures revenue with crews running across the state, really. And what makes Chris' story super interesting, at least for me, is that the growth almost broke the business before it built it, right? So he's been the one putting those systems together, those pieces together from the inside. And I feel like a lot of contractors can relate to that. So we're going to get into that today a little bit and what building a real operation actually looks like in the trades. So Chris, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I would love to start back in 2022. So you and your brothers launched this thing in 2022 and you didn't really do it with outside funding or a playbook or anything like that. So what was the turning point where you were like, okay, we're going to do this? And then how did you divide up who does what?
So, yeah, a little interesting. So, I have two brothers. I'm in the middle, and my younger brother was the one that had some similar experience to mine as far as career based home improvement sales stuff. My older brother he had worked on airplanes and stuff, military base and just, some different kind of career paths, but not as much aligned with us. So my younger brother and I were doing home improvement sales, and we kind of decided to start the business finally after talking about it for years, at least starting something somewhat construction related. And then the timing worked out great for my other brother, Adam, to kind of jump in and help. And he was with us kind of on and off throughout the growth of the business. He's not working with us currently in any capacity, but there might be another time in the future where things line up for him to be a part of the team.
Okay, cool. So he was working another job when you launched, right? So you were almost semi-solo in the beginning there. So what was that like?
Yeah, so that was interesting because it was more like I was reporting to Zach so about things that were happening in the business as I was getting things up and I was running day-to-day operations. I was kind of a one-man show as far as the administrative side and sales and all that, marketing. And so I would just have, kind of multiple conversations throughout a given day with Zach to touch base and give him insights, ask for input, that type of stuff. But Zach was a little more hands off kind of through those first, I think it was maybe year and a half before he left the job he was working. And when we decided to start the company, we were both making pretty good money at our previous employer. And so we didn't necessarily both want to give that up at the same time. And so just the way it seemed to work is I was more ready to make an exit. And then he kind of kept that job and he used some of the capital that he was making to help fund the business while he was, working that other job up until the point where he left there.
Oh, okay, that's nice. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you also mentioned Zach. He's the sales guy, right? He was, top three out of what, 1,800 people or something like that. Some
Yeah.
awesome kind of top performer there. So when you brought him in full time, what was that like in terms of how the business changed? Maybe did it operate differently when he joined full time?
It was interesting. So when we started the company, I kind of covered the whole sales role. And as we grew, before Zach came on board full time, we had taken one person who started with us as a fence installer and moved him into a sales position. And he kind of became my replacement with that role. And then I can't remember if it was, I think before or maybe after Zach started working with us full time, we had somebody else who came on and started doing sales. So when Zach actually came on, it was more like a fill-in salesperson. It's kind of like having your best player on the bench is the best analogy that I could come up with. And so that's kind of how it started. And then when we started looking at the numbers and the data and just thinking that, there were so many things we needed to improve with the business, but profitability and cash flow were kind of always like the umbrella that all the other problems were under. So gradually we shifted more and more of the sales responsibility to Zach and, started utilizing his talents more and more. So it wasn't an immediate like switch when he came on board full time to where all of a sudden we went from, selling 20 grand a week to 80 grand a week or anything like that. It was more gradual just because he kind of gradually stepped into that role in a bigger and bigger way.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's probably the smart way to do it too, rather than just throwing them into the deep end with everything that's going on. But you said something on our last call that kind of stuck with me, and also what you just talked about now with the metrics in the business until now, right? So you called the first few years ugly, right? It can
Yeah.
be a little tough. You gave that image of the house that looks great on the outside, but then the inside it's got a lot of things, a little bit messy. So
Mhm.
can you unpack that a little bit? What was actually happening behind the scenes that the revenue numbers were kind of hiding? Like you said, it was the umbrella.
Yeah, so Zach and I are very, what's a good word for it? High achiever type, like always striving to be the top of the leaderboard, when we were working as salespeople. And we just wanted to be the highest performers that we possibly could. And that transferred into running our own business so that we weren't necessarily like excited about starting a company and reaching a couple 100,000 the first year. And maybe by 5 years we reach $1 million a year. Like we weren't going to settle for that type of thing. And so that kind of paired with our inexperience of starting and running and growing a business, definitely, there was so much volatility and we were always kind of pushing the company to the edge of what the growth, would allow. And so it's like walking along the edge of a cliff and being very wobbly while you do it. And so there's a lot of missteps along the way, some big, some small. And so we experienced a lot of pain that mostly revolved around cash flow. The other thing is looking back at where we started the business, our margins were just way below what they should have been because we thought we were being fair to our customers. But in reality, like what we were doing is we were setting up a pricing structure that was enough to pay for a one-man operation, which is kind of what I was in the early days, but it was not going to be sustainable for us to actually build a company based off of those pricing structures. And as the overhead and everything else kind of increases with the structure of the company. So those are some of the challenges that we fought along the way. And looking back, if I could do it all over again, I would take a lot of lessons from those things and apply them from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's great that you were able to really find those pain points and then refine on them too. I feel like a lot of contractors and just building businesses in general, they fall into that chaos for the first couple of years because they're so focused on growth, not necessarily the systems that can help with the growth. But there's always that wall between like a scrappy startup, just like a hustler, and then like becoming a real company too. So what do you think was the point there? Because going from small to then having real structure and like real revenue, how did you figure that out? Was there the turning point there or something like that?
Yeah, that's kind of the messiness of building it is like, we didn't know what we didn't know. And we were constantly trying new things, constantly trying to solve problems within the business. Well, maybe if we change the way we do this completely, it's going to fix profitability or make sure that our marketing is staying where it needs to be and we've got the lead flow that we need and those types of things. But realistically, like I think that it was just so much inexperience that there was no one solution really. And it was something that over time we had to learn. We had to learn all these different things and you can kind of learn them all a little bit at one time. But, most of the best lessons that I've learned over the last 4 years or so are through failure, and kind of through the pain points and the low points of making bigger mistakes and, having some pain and regret over decisions that we made. But those are things that I'm also glad looking back at that we figured those things out at the scale that we were at the time, and not at the 50 or $100 million a year scale where those problems can be a lot bigger and more painful.
Even if you were just finding out about those issues now and trying to solve them now, that's way different than what it was probably two years ago. And then you mentioned you started working with a business coach too, right? So
Yeah.
what was that around the middle of last year?
Yeah, so we first met I think towards the end of Q2, and our official partnership with him started, I want to say essentially July 1, so we were kicking off for Q3. So Q3, Q4, we had him, and the first part was really, cleaning up a lot of the mess and just trying to get everything kind of reorganized and aligned and building the vision. But that progress really started to come very quickly and compound on itself to where over those, 6 months or so, at the end of last year, we made a ton of progress and really set up a good direction for 2026.
And that's awesome. Was there a specific moment that kind of pushed you towards wanting to work with a coach in that respect, or was it just a buildup of frustration over time?
Yeah, I think a buildup of frustration is a really sugar-coated way to put it, to be honest. So we had so many challenges, mistakes we knew we had made, decisions where we thought we were doing the right thing in the moment, but 30, 60, 90 days later, we realized it was a mistake. And maybe we're committed to a 1 year contract with something at this point that's a huge expense and a burden on the company that's really not paying off. So it really, I think what it was for me is, at that point we're yeah, right around 3 years in, a little more, and realizing that like I've tried to do this myself for 3 years and I've been growing it, but the problems are growing with it. And no matter how hard I try, everything that I knew to do, I had done. And I just really didn't know what I was going to be able to do that wouldn't just be a carbon copy of the mistakes I had made in the past. And so looking for some outside perspective and guidance and leadership that would make sure that the next decisions I made, which I knew were going to be bigger just based on the scale of the company, were actually going to start to move us in the right direction rather than just meandering along the same path that's headed for the edge of the cliff.
I had a similar conversation actually yesterday on a podcast. We were talking about mentorship and the importance of speaking with or just asking questions to those that have both been in your shoes, but also have the success that you're looking for. So
Uh-huh.
taking on a relationship with a coach like that can be super helpful if they've, been where you're at and they know where to take you. But what was working with them actually like? Like say I looked into your operations a week before you joined and then 6 months after you joined. What's the difference there?
Oh, I mean, it's night and day. We're not the same company. So, to give you kind of some markers of that, prior to starting working with that coach or guide, was constant problems finding their way to me. It was just, it was phone calls, text messages, emails, nonstop to the point where I was just a firefighter. Like everything that became an issue, everything that wasn't going perfectly, I was getting a call or a text or multiple. Sometimes I was getting 4 or 5 calls about the same problem, within 10 minutes of each other. It's like I can't answer the next call because I'm dealing with the last person that called me. Sometimes it's the same problem, sometimes it's multiple different problems all at once. And so that was then. Now where we're at is to kind of, show the other side is that I don't get many calls throughout the day. I still talk to my brother, just because we're close and we want to, kind of share stories and opportunities and, whether they're good or bad. But I really don't talk to most of the employees about problems that they're dealing with or specific things that are going on with them today or specific jobs or customers even. I mean, most of what's making its way up to me is the bigger picture stuff about, well, here's what we accomplished with marketing last month and, here's what we're trying to do this month and what are maybe the big things that are going to make the shift where we need it to go. I'm working more on things about thinking forward of what are our next steps of what we need to accomplish with the company, and what's going to get us there. And so, when we started working with the coach, we kind of had no direction. It was just the only way we knew to solve the problems was to try to outgrow the problems. But like I said before, the problems just grew with us. And so, what we did when we started working with the coach is we first started by saying, okay, where do we want to be like in 10 years? And then if we want to be there in 10 years, well, what do we need to be at in 5 years or 3 years? And if we want to be there in 3 years, where do we need to be in a year? And then you just bring it all the way down. Where do we need to be next quarter? Where do we need to be next week? And so to start to reverse engineer the outcome that we're looking for, basically completely turn around and do a 180 from what we had been trying to do, which was take our problems today and say, okay, forget anything 10 years from now. Like we got to survive today. And what are we going to do to make it to tomorrow? So it just completely flips the context. And that therefore gives you a totally different output of what you should be actually spending your time and energy on.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible for you. You can actually be a leader than a firefighter, right? I bet that
Yeah.
shift felt so great. But being able to also just look bigger picture, long term and short term to really define what the best next steps are too. I bet it's just amazing. So to get from problems coming to you, having to deal with that chaos all the time to then, the results come to you. Was that more of a systems and process kind of thing, or was that just a team mentality mindset shift? What was that like?
I would say less systems and processes. There was a little bit of that to support it and kind of facilitate that actually being possible. But really, what it came down to was the team and not so much growing the team, but more so giving them the control and the ownership over the different parts of the business that they were aligned with. And I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I'm okay with things not being perfect from other people. But when I do something like I want it to be absolutely 100% perfect. And I had to let go of that because, realistically, like for the company to grow, I can't expect myself to do everything. And I can't expect everybody else to always have the exact same vision or same standard for one small task that needs to be completed. And so just being able to kind of give people the freedom and give myself the freedom to say, you know what? I expect a good outcome out of them. It might not be the exact same outcome that I would have gotten if I did it myself, but that doesn't mean it's worse. And so starting to understand that for myself and open those things up for them to take control of the different pieces of the business is really what freed us up to make that shift and continue to grow.
So I'm glad you said that. I'm also the same way, by the way, a little bit of a perfectionist. I feel like a lot of people are probably like that, but I want to talk about quality. So how the business actually runs today, right? You have about 12 people.
Yeah, so we're around 12 like administrative W-2 salespeople type employees, and then all of our installers are subcontractor crews that we partner with.
Okay, cool. That's exactly what I was kind of get to. So
Uh-huh.
you have those, employees W-2s. Your brother really leads the sales side of things now, and then your installers are subcontractors. So how do you maintain quality when the crew doing the work isn't technically, your employees?
Yeah, great question. So I'll walk you back to when we started the company because that's kind of the foundation for it. So when we were working at other jobs in the home improvement industry selling projects, one of them was fences. And so the nice thing was my brother and I already had relationships with crews that were out building fences every single day. And so when we came into the company, we had built 64 feet of fencing total from the day I was born until the day we started the company. That's the only fencing that I had ever been a part of. And so we knew that our expertise was maybe in sales or marketing or those types of things, but we didn't really have the hands-on experience to go out and do the production side of it or to even teach up a new team of how to do that. And so we partnered with subcontractor crews from day one. And that was really like added to our quality rather than taking away from it. I think, in the construction world, especially, there's this misunderstanding about subcontractors versus W-2 employees. And really what it comes down to, it's how you pay them. But what we found is with the subcontractor setup, putting people on 1099s and paying them for quality work gets a much better result than paying somebody by the hour to do the same project. And so that's kind of the foundation of where we started. We tried to shift. We thought, oh, we can make more money if we have our own crews and everybody's W-2s, and then we'll buy the trucks and we'll buy the tools and we'll rent the shop space and all of this other stuff. And pretty soon, like we were just burning money. It was one of the mistakes that I kind of wish I could undo, but I'm thankful that I learned those lessons early on. And so for us to take quality in the beginning was just having people that we knew we could trust to put out a quality product. We knew how they installed fences and we knew that we could convey that to our customers. And so that there was this, perfect alignment of what we tell our customers we're going to do and what they actually get. Um, and then today, how we, continue to build upon that is actually having, as we've got more and more crews coming on board, um, having structure of this is our installation manual for this type of fence. And every crew that's going to go out and build this type of fence, these are the exact things. This is how deep they dig the holes. It's how much concrete they put in. It's how wide the hole is. It's what type of nail they use, all these different things that kind of come into like, I don't know that I want to be necessarily associated with McDonald's, but like no matter which McDonald's you go to, you get the same exact burger and they're all the same. And that's kind of how it is for fencing. Like we have to create the systems and processes that are going to make sure we output the same product every time, no matter who the salesman was, no matter who the crew was that installed it, all those different things.
Yeah, that structure is so key to scale too. I had a guest, she's an interior designer. She was talking about a 300, almost 300 step documented process for her people. And it's so important because then that's how you maintain quality. But then switching a little bit, so there's hiring out that expertise, like the subcontractor, like you're saying, it actually helps quality. But then on the other side of things, so you mentioned some big pushes this year on building some systems, right? But you're also trying to do that on your own. So
Yeah.
how does that work? I mean, you told me you never written a line of code before, so how are you kind
Yeah.
of learning how to
Never.
do all that stuff?
The great thing is just where AI has come really in the last like 90 to 120 days, I feel like it's been a big shift for us. So, and this is a big shift for us even more recently than that. So when we look back at what the company was doing with AI last year, it was like kind of what everybody does with AI today. It's go into ChatGPT, ask it a question, tell it you need this document, and have it spit it out, and then you copy and paste it to something else. I'm big on Dan Martell. I watch his content all the time. Seen him live, and just very thankful for some of the teachings that I've gotten from him and where that's helped me get. But the big thing for us to make a shift this year was for us to realize that we can have AI do so much more than just writing some type of copy for us to copy and paste. And so this year we've actually built a complete web-based platform. It's not done yet, but we're only a handful of weeks in, and we've spent relatively minimal money on AI tokens. And so we're making so much progress. We're building so many things that like 3 months ago we weren't even thinking about being possible. And what that's done for us is we're no longer constrained by what the software companies that we had been partnering with have in their system. So the one feature that's frustrating for us to say, why doesn't this software have this? And call them or put in a request. They say, well, yeah, we might do that at some point, but there's just so many other things that other users want that are more important for more people. And I get that. Like they've got their own business to run, but AI is allowing us to make systems fit our business perfectly and have all those systems work together as one. And so that's the shift that I'm excited to see for us developing this year.
Well, they just said all that. That's like exactly what I preach all the time is you have the ability to build systems that actually work for your specific workflow rather than trying to mold yourself to all these different softwares. It doesn't make sense now, I feel like, to take on a new software where you have to change how you operate. But
Yeah.
so what are some of the key problems that you're looking to solve now that you know you can build, some of these tools yourself?
So key things, a lot of it's time savings. What we realize is one of the big shifts that I didn't touch on earlier about us working with this coach and starting to kind of redevelop our whole process of how we run the company. First thing is getting the right people on the team. And part of that means taking the people who aren't the right people and getting them out of the team. But where we are today, we've got a great core team of people. And it's hard to go find two or three more of those people as quickly as we need them, especially with a smaller growing business where things are changing rapidly about what roles we need and where those resources need to be allocated. As we come into our busy season this year, what we're realizing is we've got to make more shifts in capacity, big shifts that we don't necessarily want to go out and try to hire for all at once. And so taking the people that we have who are A players and they're really good at what they do, and they're just lacking time to handle as many customers as we want to bring into the pipeline. The AI efficiency and creating the tools that are going to support them is really what I think is going to allow us to do that, not just this year, but beyond. And so just looking at, okay, my project manager, when we sell a project, they need to review the project and they need to do all these different steps. And each one takes maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes. And building an AI system that, based on the input from my salesperson, all those steps are already completed. And so now we've alleviated maybe an hour or so worth of work for every single customer that moves through our system. Those are the types of things that we're trying to build to make our system a lot more efficient and make our team hopefully happier and healthier and not so stressed out dealing with all the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I really like the way you look at the ROI in terms of the time saving and the efficiency that you get because these systems and automations can now just allow for that extra capacity without adding the headcount. Like I'll give you a good
Mhm.
example. I might have mentioned it on our pre-call, but I was talking to a great contractor, they're a remodeler. They use a specific CRM that just doesn't connect to a lot of things. And they have really like A players doing admin. Two women, I believe, they're great. They spend 10 hours on the slow weeks, right? 20 hours on the heavy weeks doing just double, triple data entry on stuff
Mhm.
that can be automated. So removing things like that and taking your A players and allowing them to do more high leverage things that will actually push the business forward rather than just doing that manual stuff can be
Yeah.
great for capacity. I wanted to ask you about your goals too. So kind of looking ahead, right? You said you're a high achiever. You want all these great things. You don't want to wait, 5, 10 years to make $1 million. So you closed last year around, we'll say mid seven figures, right? And you want to get to that 8 figure range, the 10 million this year.
Yep.
That's not incremental growth, right? That's a completely different business. And that's awesome. I
Yeah.
love that you have those goals. So what has to be true to really make that happen for you this year?
Yeah, what a great question. There are multiple things that have to be true. And one of the biggest things that we're working on right now, and this is kind of where all our AI stuff really got kicked off, is that we have to learn how to duplicate phenomenal salespeople. And because, like we said, my brother, he was always in the top three of 1,800 or so peers. And those people aren't easy to find. And so what I need to do is I need to go out and find salespeople that can do what he does. But if I can't go find them, I need to learn how to make them. And so making sure that they have the resources that Zach has. And some of that's knowledge, some of it's experience, some of it's just tools. So for instance, there are a lot of things that Zach will talk to customers about, and he'll pull up pictures of, look at this fence that was installed the right way versus this one that was not, and let me show you the differences and point those out. And so then I have other people who are salespeople now or even in the past that didn't have the same pictures. They didn't know how to explain those things to customers. They might not have even understood those benefits of quality over something else. And so making sure that we have a resource where all these pictures can be in one place for everybody to access, and they've got the captions or the annotations that are going to allow them to kind of talk a customer through. Let me show you the good versus bad side by side, and here's what's different about them, and here's why that matters. And so that's one very small piece of us being able to kind of do our best possible job of carbon copying what a phenomenal salesperson looks like, and make sure that everybody else who we bring onto the team that has at least, base level, like, being able to talk to customers well and has a good personality that can connect with the customers. Like, those things are hard to teach, but I can teach them how to go over some pictures, and I can teach them how to build an estimate with the software. And I can teach them how to draw out a fence layout within software and stuff like that. Just making sure that it's easy for the people that are doing those jobs. And that goes, obviously beyond the sales team, but that's a big piece of it. I mean, if I could go out and get 10 times as many leads tomorrow, I would need to have salespeople to assign those to. And so making sure that we can create a process that's going to be quickly scalable is a big piece of getting to that $10 million mark this year.
Yeah, I like the approach you're taking on that too, because it's super difficult to find, I guess, good salespeople now, especially with the labor shortages that are going on in the trades too. So taking the approach to kind of bottle up the sales skills that Zach has and just kind of replicate that in terms of training, I think that's a good way to go. So you're going to be building like SOPs, kind of a structure for these salespeople to take them from where they are to Zach's level. That's the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So SOPs, a lot of training. I mean, we've built out modules and modules and modules that go into the systems of how to build a fence quote, but also, the nuances of like objection handling specific to our business and what we sell and how we operate and kind of what place we hold in the market for a fence company. And so just getting that really niche down, and this goes, like we talked about, making our software more aligned with who we are and what we do and what we need. That goes along with the sales process too. Like I can buy a salesperson some sales training program, but chances are it's not specifically designed for fence companies, and it's not specifically designed for a fence company that is, high quality, high price, all those things that we are. And so just making our own system and saying, what's out in the market doesn't really work for us. Now with AI, we can build our own thing within a matter of weeks and have it be more tailored to who we are and what we need.
That's awesome. I want to stay on the growth side of things. I'd like to ask this question to a lot of the guests. You might have already answered it with the sales side of things, but let's say you have a magic wand, hypothetically, right?
Mhm.
And you could change or add or remove one thing in the business that's might be holding you back, so it would give you a lot of time back or it would double your momentum. What do you think that one thing would be?
I don't think there is one. Alex Hermosi, I think it was him. Yeah, it was definitely him. But one of his teachings that I heard was you can't really get rid of the constraint or eliminate it. You can't get rid of the constraint in the business. You can only move it. And with where we are and how rapidly we have been growing and we're continuing to try to grow, that stuff happens quickly. Like I said, if I get 10 times as many leads, I don't have enough salespeople. Well, it doesn't really have to be 10 times as many. It's like if I got 25% more leads, I would not have enough salespeople. And then if I got those leads and then I got the salespeople, I wouldn't have enough installers. And then, I wouldn't have enough project managers. And, so it's those things can shift very quickly. And what we see is in a lot of ways, there's constraints in the business where they're all so close to being maxed out with the growth that we've been on that it's hard to identify which one is actually the biggest constraint right now. And so we're switching from where it used to be at best. We would say, okay, what's our biggest constraint? We try to solve it. And then we'd almost like sit and wait for the next constraint to show itself. And we would start to realize, oh, this is the other thing that we've got to start worrying about now. And we're in a different space now. We're looking at it like, well, we know as soon as we solve this problem, the next one's sitting there waiting, and we know what it is, and we know what we have to do to solve that. So it's kind of like, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but if we were playing a game of chess and you're starting to move one piece before you finish moving the next one, it's kind of like we're not just thinking 15 moves ahead like some master chess player. We're actually moving 15 pieces all at once. And so that's the shift that I think we've learned more and more over time, is to see those things and predict the things and figure out the problem solving and actually get the solving in motion before we've solved the previous problem 100%. So, when I talk about like the AI efficiency by giving the project managers tools, and then the stuff with the installers, we've within the last couple of weeks, we built a whole pipeline and we started reaching out and getting leads for more installers and built an application process of how they can fill out all their information and have it streamline the onboarding for us, refining our subcontractor agreements and all those things. And we're kind of thinking 15 moves ahead in that way and acting on those moves all at once with a bigger focus on the one that is the most at the forefront of where we are today with constraints.
That's my favorite answer that I've had to that question so far. I like that you pull from, Hormozy. You've talked about Dan Martell too. That's awesome. You pull from their perspectives and then you actually act on that too, which is great. I do want to ask you one more question though, just because you've been so open about the first 3 years of the business being a little bit chaotic, and I feel like like you said, you learned a lot of hard lessons. And
Mhm.
let's say a contractor is just getting started now, or they want to get started, they want to build something from scratch with a small team and just, a lot of hustle. What's one thing you wish that someone had said to you, or just advice they'd given you that would have saved you the most pain?
It's more so me listening to advice earlier. And I didn't disregard any good advice that comes to mind, but I didn't act on things as quickly as I should have. There were a lot of times where I was given good advice, whether it was somebody directly or, a lot of what I learned might have been on YouTube or, listen to a podcast on Spotify or something. And it's hard. It's nearly impossible to implement everything. You don't always get those lessons taught to you at the right time when they're most needed. And I think the biggest thing for me to say to somebody who's, maybe just starting or hasn't started yet or is on that road to their first $1 million or so is that you've just got to keep pushing through. And I'll go back to Hermosi. And I think he was quoting somebody else when I heard him say this recently, but success and failure are on the same freeway. Failure's just an earlier exit. That's what I look back at our, 3.5, well, actually almost just at 4 years right now, is that there were so many times where we could have given up, and anybody who was sane would have given up. Um, and we just kept pushing. We just kept saying, no, we made it. We made it this far. We're going to get through one more week. We're going to get through one more week. And that's something that I'm so thankful for, is that we did have the resilience. It was painful. It was ugly. It was messy. There were sleepless nights, so much stress that I was in physical pain just from the stress. And I got through it. And I'm thankful for that. And where I am today, looking back, all the problems aren't solved, but I understand so much better how to deal with problems. And they don't come with the same level of stress that they used to, because I have that perspective and the context that I got through 3.5 years of this or 4 years of this. I'm going to get through one more month or one more week or one more day. And that's something that I think if you really want to succeed and you really want to grow a business and do it quickly, you have to build that resilience and understand that if you don't have it day one, that's okay. I didn't either. It's going to come over time, and you just have to trust that.
That's incredible advice, man. That's the kind of the resilience you have, the discipline, and just like you said, pushing through when a sane person would have quit. That's what's going to make you, and that's what makes you a high achiever. So really, Chris, this has been a great conversation. This has been awesome. I
Yeah,
appreciate you
thanks
being
so
so
much.
open about everything, where the business was, not just the highlight reel, the chaos in the beginning and what you're doing now for growth is really going to put you ahead. So, Chris, where should people find you, connect with you if they want to chat? Maybe a website, LinkedIn you're most active on?
Yeah, my LinkedIn is pretty simple. That's just my name, Chris Husek. I'm not super active on social media these days. There's a little bit of stuff out there. LinkedIn's a good spot, or you can always find our company at www.husekfence.com.
Awesome. I will link that below so people can find you. But for everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to The Intelligent Builder. If you found this episode valuable, make sure to share it with another contractor, operator in your circle, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Owen.